From inside the castle in Owings Mills, Maryland, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Giana Han. Giana, my voice cracking right off the top. Great start. As the Ravens are a mere 5 picks away from number 30 overall in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. Before we get into who's left and who the Ravens could pick here, first initial impressions of what has been somewhat of a surprising night.
So much offense.
So much offense.
And I know a lot of the Ravens defensive players have a lot to say about that. Well, I should say current and former, because I know Jonas was talking a bit, but Marlon Humphrey seems a little shocked. But I don't know. I don't think any of us expected that many quarterbacks to go. I don't think the Falcons expected that quarterback pick. But you know, the more quarterbacks that go, the better for the Ravens.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I certainly thought maybe 4 quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy being the 4th. I didn't see Michael Penix going before J.J. McCarthy or even being the first-round pick. Bo Nix as well. I have no idea what the Falcons are doing with that Michael Penix pick, but that was hours ago.
And I'll say, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased because, you know, I covered Bo back in the day, but I did see some things that he's a little bit more of a known quantity than J.J. McCarthy, so that doesn't surprise me super much.
Sure.
But just, I don't think both in all or 6, what is it, the first time since 1983. That's kind of a long time.
Yeah. So now we are sitting mere minutes away from the Ravens making their pick at number 30 overall. And Giana, somehow, some way, it seems like Eric DeCosta and the Ravens front office are able to, for the most part, stick and pick and allow talent to fall all the way towards them. And I was a little nervous heading into tonight that a lot of these offensive tackles, these cornerbacks, would be off the board by the time the Ravens picked, but things are shaping up nicely. The fact that you've seen a lot of quarterbacks going, a lot of offensive players going in the first 20, 25 picks, probably helps their case, and we're starting to see some guys that are considered bona fide first-round talents still available.
Yeah, I think we have, if you check Jonas Shaffer's Twitter.
At Jonas_Shaffer.
They have, you know, he wrote about Tyler Guyton. They have Jordan Morgan, who was in my mock draft. O-line. They've got a few other options where, see, when I was doing my mock draft, through the simulator, there weren't almost any O-linemen left, so I had to make some hard decisions. But, I mean, even though there's a lot of offensive players that have gone, there's still plenty of offensive linemen left. Now, it's just whether Eric DeCosta thinks that their ranking is equal to the value of number 30 pick.
Right. Looks like Jordan Morgan, Arizona offensive tackle, is going to go at number 25 to the Green Bay Packers, according to Albert Breer. So
hey, I'm behind on that one.
Yeah, so there's one guy. He's always like 3 minutes ahead of all these picks. So there's one of the offensive tackles that is going off the board. Some other offensive tackles, though, Graham Barton, who can play pretty much all 5 offensive line positions, is still out there. That's an ideal candidate, I would think, for the Ravens at 30, because not only did you restructure Ronnie Stanley's contract and you traded Morgan Moses, but you also lost both your starting guards in Kevin Zeitler and John Simpson.
What I was saying is, if you look at the number of O-linemen, it looks like they have a lot. Then you think about how many you need 5 versus like a wide receiver, you need 3 O-lines.
Right.
And then you look at the talent, not just the depth. They have some guys who might be able to compete, but they don't necessarily have that blue chip talent that they could get with this first round pick.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think they need is, I mean, when you have a guy like Lamar, who, you know, likes to run a little bit, and then you sign Derrick Henry, that shows you have a commitment to the run, which they've always had.
Yeah.
But you're thinking they might lean into it even more with Henry, Justice Hill, eventually Keaton Mitchell. They're probably looking for another running back. You can't do any of that.
No.
You don't have a lineman.
Exactly. And, you know, this offense is going to stay productive so long as Lamar stays healthy. And keeping him healthy and upright is going to be dependent a lot on the offensive line in front of him. And like you said, Derrick Henry can only do so much behind a shabby offensive line. We saw in Tennessee last year that he can't overcome all that change and all that turnover up front. So I would think that they would try to target an offensive line coming into this, and it looks like Graham Barton, the Duke offensive lineman, like we said, is still available. Other than that, you have Tyler Guyton, the Oklahoma tackle, is still out there. Anybody else that you would think, Kingsley Suamatia maybe, that you would think would be worthy there?
Yeah, I actually wondering, he's like ranked a little bit more towards second round, but
Mhm.
I was reading part of that might be because it is such a deep draft.
Yes.
That draft class that he would be higher if not for how many there are, but he just has he was very raw, but he has a lot of the athletic gifts they're looking for.
Yeah.
He has through all the prospect profiles I've read, people think he's going to be a starter, and so that's really what you're looking for in the first round, and you want to hit on it. So especially with O linemen, the one concern is whether he's ready immediately because he is so raw.
Right.
Whether it's if he's meant for trial by fire or if a team has time to give him some time to develop, but we don't know because there are some questions. There's Andrew Voorhees, who's supposed to go a lot higher than he did, and then he tore his ACL at the combine.
Yeah, 7th round pick.
Insane story. So maybe he's an unknown quantity. Maybe he's a dark horse for starting, and maybe there's some more time. But we don't know, and so like we said, just need to get that talent, like guaranteed talent.
Yeah. I mean, you still have Daniel Falele, who 3rd round pick, I believe, from a few years ago, could be a starter in week 1, but maybe is overtaken by a 1st round pick at some point. We've seen some other offensive linemen go off the board, one to a division rival, 18th overall, Amarius Mims, the Georgia offensive tackle, who has immense talent, but also does not have the kind of starting experience that you usually see for 1st round picks.
So much for Graham Barton. He just got selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes. So Barton goes off the board.
Jordan Morgan, so I guess you're going down to Guyton.
Yeah.
And Kingsley Sue-Matia.
Yeah. So Tyler Guyton's still out there, Oklahoma tackle. Kingsley Sue-Matia, BYU, still out there. Some cornerbacks that are still out there. We saw Quinyon Mitchell go to the Eagles at 22. We also saw Terrion Arnold, the first Alabama cornerback, go 24th overall. Those guys had to wait a while to hear their names called, but they're off the board. Another Alabama cornerback in Kool-Aid McKinstry, still out there, and somebody who could fit this defensive backfield pretty well. You could draft him, stick him at outside cornerback, maybe move Marlon Humphrey inside, and give Kool-Aid a starting job on day 1.
Very interesting thing that Jonas, again, pointed out is that he is within maybe like a quarter inch, a half inch of being Marlon Humphrey in a lot of ways in his build and everything. He was a starter at Alabama, which is not something you can take lightly.
Sure.
Even if they didn't win a championship this year, they're still competing against all those people. Yeah, SEC, also a high level of competition. But on top of that, really his only question surrounding his game is his long speed. He did say at the combine that you can't look at his film and find any times he got beat. Jonas did find some times if you read the article. However, he plays good enough game that he can make up for it in a lot of ways. So he would be a good option there in a space where they have 2 really good starters in Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens, and then they have a good backup in Arthur Millette, but he's a little bit better on the inside, whereas Kool-Aid can help out on the outside.
Right.
But from after Millette, there's a bit of a drop off. So they don't have Ronald Darby anymore. As little as Rocky's contributed, he's a little bit more experienced. Don't have him anymore either. So that is another position that's behind those starters. You got to get some depth there.
Absolutely. And I tweeted out from @AllBannerSports earlier in the evening which position you would like to see the Ravens target with the number 30 overall pick. I put offensive line out there, cornerback, edge rusher. So far, cornerback is winning the battle. So Ravens fans, I would think it would be offensive line.
I love offensive line personally.
Yeah, I mean, given the amount of turnover that we've seen along the line and how important that position is, but I do get cornerback. You're also going with a new defensive coordinator, obviously Mike McDonald now in Seattle. So you have Zach Gordon there. You want to give him a baseline level of talent to work with to implement his kind of scheme. And we've seen an attrition in terms of talent signing elsewhere and moving on. I also had edge rusher out there because Jadeveon Clowney, who had close to double-digit sacks last year, is no longer with this organization. Odafe Owe, a lot of pressure is going to be on his shoulders to take a leap forward. So that's another position they could address. I just don't know if the number of guys at edge rusher will be available for them at number 30. I think that's probably a day 2 kind of need for this team.
Yeah, and I think I would have put that a lot higher before the Justin Madubuike extension, before Kyle Van Noy came back. I know Van Noy is not guaranteed to do what he did last year, and he's also not guaranteed to, stay in the shape he is as he gets older. However, the immediate need is not there the way it is for cornerback, wide receiver, line.
Yeah.
And, looking at that, I think coming into the offseason, I might have said defense needed to be addressed so much higher.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I've been thinking wide receiver, O-line, but that's really just what's happened with free agency, with the trades, because they lost so many defensive players.
Yeah, Tom.
Like, so many. But I think just when you actually sit down and look at the O-line, it's just so shocking that was where my mind went.
Right. Yeah. And certainly when you look at that defense, there's going to be a lot of pressure. It's not just at Afaowe. A lot of the younger guys are going to have to step up, especially along the defensive line, in order for this team to stay as good as they were, or close to as good as they were defensively last year. Another guy that they could take is a defensive back. He's kind of being viewed as maybe an inside corner, safety, outside corner hybrid. Cooper DeJean, who is still out there, the Iowa defensive back. A guy that I think Zach Orr could have a lot of fun with. He's a different kind of player than Kyle Hamilton, but he seems similarly versatile in that you can deploy him in a lot of different ways, rushing the passer, over the middle of the field as a deep safety. Cooper DeJean, I think, would be really interesting. Has some injury history, but would be a fun piece to play with.
I ranked the position groups by strength a little bit earlier, a few weeks ago, and I think some people will probably disagree with me that I put safeties as weaker than cornerbacks. But I think the starters might be stronger. You got a Pro Bowler in Kyle Hamilton. Marcus Williams is just barely not one. But my problem is there's no one after them.
Yeah.
At least, I said Brandon Stevens and Marlon Humphrey, and then you have Arthur Miller.
Yeah.
You have other guys. There's no one at safety.
Or Darius Washington, but he's probably more of a corner.
He played more corner. Maybe you can move him. But if you have Cooper DeJean, who is already slated to potentially be a safety or a cornerback, that means he has the ability to be moved over. And so to have a guy that can help out in either way, I think if Daryl Worley hadn't gotten hurt, we might have seen a little bit more of that because he's played both. But before he got hurt, he was essential. He played over 100 snaps, helping out in different ways. So just to have a guy that could fill in multiple ways, versatility is everything.
Yeah.
And helping a team with a deep run. Because, as you get further in the season, you don't know what injuries are going to happen. And they certainly saw injuries in the secondary, as DeCosta mentioned, both sides. And that was my concern as well with the safeties, is neither Kyle Hamilton nor Marcus Williams escaped the season unscathed by injury. Escaped unscathed. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. But, so that's why I put that one higher, because they're great. But if one of them goes down, so Cooper DeJean.
We saw Marcus Williams play through that torn pec for a lot of the year, and it absolutely affected him. And he's been relatively healthy throughout his entire career, but one of those guys goes down, like you said, Giana, and you could be in big trouble. So maybe you add to that. We were seeing from Albert Breer that after Graham Barton was taken 26th overall by the Buccaneers, Cardinals are on the clock at 27, and they intend to take Missouri defensive end Darius Robinson.
See, I was refreshing every time you mention a guy because I feel like they keep getting taken.
Yes.
So
Darius Robinson, an edge rusher who is an absolute monster. He is a physical specimen and very productive at Missouri. He goes off the board, so there's another edge rusher. So now the Bills are on the clock at number 28. As we are counting down, by the way, here on the BaltimoreBanner.com and anywhere that you are getting your podcast, please do subscribe to the Banner Ravens podcast. We're counting down to the number 30 overall pick. So the Bills are on the clock at number 30. The Ravens are 2 picks away. Getting less and less likely that they would trade up. But there are still some guys out there. Cooper DeJean still out there. He just has to survive the next 2 picks in order for the Ravens to go ahead and get him. Johnny Newton, a defensive lineman, that might be a little bit redundant with what they have, given the fact that they handed Justin Madubuike an extension. But Johnny Newton, a very, very talented defensive lineman who can rush the passer out of Illinois, might be a piece that you could move interior defensive line or to the edge.
Yeah, they're pretty filled out at D-line. They quietly brought back all their guys, not as big as stars as Justin Madubuike, but all of them are solid. But, first is Michael Pierce at the end of the season. And, he's getting up there in age, but he hasn't really seen a drop off. And then they brought back Brett Urban, who when he went in, you didn't really notice that there wasn't a star out there.
Yeah.
They have like all these different options. They're very filled out for maybe years to come. They have Tavius Robinson, Travis Schick. They just have a lot of guys.
Yes.
However, I think the biggest name would be Justin Hudeke. So maybe if you get a star name, that position has been a premium, because if passer is the most important position, that means pass rusher is the second most important, because that's how you defend it.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't be the worst. I don't think you're addressing the biggest need. However, it wouldn't be like terrible.
Yeah, that would be a best player available kind of thing. And I think that's if Cooper DeJean goes off the board in the next couple picks and is not available for them to take him. If we're continuing with cornerback, Cooper DeJean, as mentioned, is still there. Nate Wiggins, the very slender cornerback from Clemson. Some people think that he could be in the mold of like a Sauce Gardner of a top outside corner. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, as mentioned, is still there. Wide receiver, you have A.D. Mitchell from Texas. You have Xavier Worthy, also from Texas, who's kind of a speedy burner. Both those guys, I think the Ravens will address wide receiver at some point in this draft, maybe day 2, but I tend to think that they'll save that for round 2 or 3.
I think you mentioned Odafe Owe, and we're still waiting to see Wilkson the 5th year, so that could change things ahead. But they did extend it, right, for Rashad Bateman, which will change things a bit in terms of long-term depth. Once again, similar to safety and cornerback, they have 3 guys who can start. But after that, Tyler Wallace, great punt returner. I think he had 1 catch in 11 games, 2 targets. Yeah. That's not really who you want coming in. They signed Deontay Hartley, who, he has contributed in the past on both special teams and in the offense. Even if he's not a start, but I think you just need more than 3 starters, but really only 2 potential stars and 1 established star. Yeah. Even Zay is not completely established star.
He certainly has the potential to be a number 1 wide receiver, but there just isn't a great track record for number 1 wide receivers who are that size.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you saw with this offense was, they like to go to the hot hand, but also it didn't require all of the receivers to be consistent, because they didn't get looked to every single game the way a lot of offenses do. So you don't actually know how well these guys will do when leaned upon to carry it without having an Odell. Not having that more consistent guy to at least like back them up if one of them is not having their hot game.
I know there was some frustration, maybe from some Ravens fans, given the hype for Odell Beckham Jr. and then the production. Considering, he had, fewer than 600 receiving yards, but that's still production you have to replace somehow. Yeah. And Rashad Bateman, unfortunately, has struggled with injuries in his first 3 years. And Zay Flowers could take a step up, but you'd like to just have a little bit more security at that position, even with the emergence of Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews coming back supposedly fully healthy.
I don't think that's a position where you saw a lot of injury this year for the Ravens, but it is certainly a position you could see a lot of injury just with the collisions they're having.
Yeah, Zay Flowers' size.
Yeah, and I think, is it Xavier Worthy? He's a little bit on the smaller side. I do think there would be some value to adding more size just to give Lamar a different type of target. Absolutely. So I know Jonas had talked with me about trading back to get Keon Coleman if they don't think he's worth a 2nd round, but he is worth adding as their first pick. Yeah. Or worth a 1st round, I should say. So that's another guy that is, I believe, still on the board, right?
Yes, both those wide receivers. I think the only 4 wide receivers we've seen taken were the guys that we saw in the top 10, and Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison. We saw Brian Thomas Jr. Also get taken.
Shout out to the guy I passed in Tango who wanted Rome Odunze. I hope he went to the team you wanted.
All right. Well, Rome Odunze did go off the board 9th overall to the Chicago Bears. Malik Neighbors is the other one I'm forgetting from LSU, who went 6th overall to the New York Giants. So we've seen those 4 wide receivers, but from everything we've heard, there was going to be a drop-off after those 4 wide receivers in terms of talent. Just to reset here, Paul Mancano and Giana Han, we are live at the Castle as we are counting down to the Ravens' number 30 overall selection on night 1 of the NFL Draft. Right now, as we speak, the Buffalo Bills have the 28th overall pick, and they are making their selection. And then the Cowboys traded with the Detroit Lions, so the Cowboys traded back to number 29 overall.
Actually, Buffalo and Kansas City just traded.
Wow. So
the team that knocked the Ravens out of the playoffs are now picking ahead of the Ravens.
Has traded ahead of the Ravens. This I thought might be a possibility if there are some guys left on the board. Who do you think this could be for? Cooper DeJean, maybe? After they traded L'Jarius Sneed away?
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
maybe an offensive tackle. We know that that's something that they could be in need of as well.
And they want someone very specific to jump up math 3 spots.
3 spots, yeah. So they clearly wanted to hop in front of the Cowboys and or Ravens.
Yes.
And the Niners obviously have the 31st overall pick. So I think also the Chiefs could address wide receiver. The guys that we just mentioned are still out there. Xavier Legette is still out there. A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. So maybe they're trying to
have some difficulty with receiver until the Ravens game.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Again, a weak spot for them, but it didn't matter. So the Chiefs, I guess, now on the clock.
Marlon Humphrey says it's got to be Cooper or Kool-Aid.
Well, if Marlon is saying, then you have to consider.
You can't tell we have our Twitter live
up
in front of us.
Keep
track.
There are a couple players, that I thought were falling very nicely for the Ravens. Cooper DeJean being one, Kool-Aid McKinstry being another. And now the Ravens just have to sit and wait and hope that neither of those guys goes, unless they want to trade up one spot to Dallas's pick, and they're going to have to just white knuckle this and see who goes.
Tyler Wright's still on there, so that's a good. They need a tackle. He's a good guy, and then they still have. There's enough guys that they're still going to have a really good guy left.
Yeah,
by the time they get to 30 at this rate. Thanks to the 6 quarterbacks, though.
Yeah, pushing all of the defensive talent down. A lot of offensive linemen have been taken, but as we mentioned, there are still some guys still out there. Possibility is always that the Ravens, if they wanted to, could trade down. Next pick that they have is number 62 overall. I would have thought that if they were going to trade out of the first round, it might be a team like the Raiders or the Broncos trying to trade back up to get their quarterback. The Broncos already got their quarterback. I don't think there are going to be any more quarterbacks taken in this first round.
I mean, are there any left for the Raiders to trade back into?
Yeah, Michael Pratt might be the next best Tulane quarterback. Might be the next best quarterback. So we're still waiting for the Chiefs to make their selection at number 28 overall, which is a selection that they traded up to, and they are taking a wide receiver. According to Albert Breer, they're taking Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy. So, guy who broke the record for fastest 40-yard dash at the Combine. 4.21, I believe. He is going to be a Kansas City Chief. So they get another wide receiver to add to that room that they already had Hollywood Brown a part of.
True. Although I don't love that the Ravens will have to play that. I don't hate that the Ravens didn't take Xavier, or didn't get to take Xavier Worthy. Because like I said, he's a very similar type of player in a lot of ways to both Rashad and Zay.
Yes.
And I just think they need some variety to be able to mix it up. I mean, both their defense and their offense are based on being able to mix things up. So I wouldn't hate if they trade down for Keon Coleman. I also wouldn't mind if they go among these quarterbacks that they still have left or offensive tackle. I was leaning so hard on O-line because I get why they traded Morgan Moses. But at the same time, I mean, Harbaugh said it himself. It was a team-friendly deal.
Yes.
Great player for a great bargain. So I was still, even though I wasn't shocked, I was still surprised.
I was too, yeah. I mean, I thought one of those two tackles, and Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses, might be headed out the door, given the tight cap situation that the Ravens have. But to offload him for a 4th-round pick swap and a 6th-round pick felt maybe a little bit selling low.
He is older. He had an injury, but he doesn't have an injury history.
Yeah.
Because he was an Iron Man up until that injury.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm not a medical professional, but I don't believe it's one that you can't come back from.
Yep.
And for a guy that was that consistent, I had some people push back when I said that, but if you look at his stats pre-injury, very, very consistent, very reliable. Even with his injury, he wasn't terrible considering.
Yeah, playing for
Yeah.
it.
So, 4th and 6th round, I feel like you can maybe get a little bit more.
Yeah. Well,
I'll say
deal is done.
all the extra picks that the Ravens have, I'll say from the Jets. So if you like their draft, you can go thank the New York Jets.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we are just 2 picks away now from the Ravens taking a player with the 30th overall selection. Guys who are still left who could interest them. Iowa defensive back Cooper DeJean, Illinois defensive tackle Johnny Newton, Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins, Alabama cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, and on the offensive line, Oklahoma offensive tackle Tyler Guyton. I think that's a good place to start.
How many points do you get for your cool name?
I think you get it. I mean, Kool-Aid McKinstry is one of the coolest of all names.
Yes, only competing with Chop Robinson, I think.
Chop Robinson, yeah.
You
who
gotta
did go
love
off the board.
Yes, you gotta love a food reference.
Yeah. Kool-Aid got his nickname, I believe, because his grandmother immediately, pretty much like right after he was born, said his smile looked like the Kool-Aid Man's smile.
Which we had a picture of the Kool-Aid Man sent in our Slack, and it's not terribly far of a stretch,
Really?
you
Wow.
know?
23 years later, he's still pulling it off. All right, so the Chiefs are making their selection at number 28 overall. We want to know who you think the Ravens should take, by the way. Let us know in all the comments at All Banner Sports and subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, $1 for 6 months, where you can read our full coverage. By the way, shortly after this pick is made, we'll give you our thoughts. Then we're going to hop into the press room right behind us and listen to what Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh have to say. And then we will also have a post-pick podcast with myself and Jonas Shaffer to break down who the Ravens take at number 30 overall. Giana.
Breaking. Tyler Guyton is now off. So I don't know about you, but I mean, no, Jordan Morgan's gone too. I don't think they're going to line here.
Yeah.
I think they needed to go to line. But the way the cards are falling, I don't think they're going to line.
I don't think so either. I mean, the next guy who would be available is probably Kingsley Suamataia from BYU.
Yeah.
Maybe if they want to go interior, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, but he's more of a center at this point. I'm with you, Giana. I think they're probably going cornerback.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not, like I said, I have no problems with Cooper DeJean. He answers a lot of problems if he truly can play.
Yeah.
Both safety and cornerback. Love Kool-Aid's name, but I think that Cooper would just help a little bit more with immediate needs.
Yeah.
And kind of scaling the extreme number of losses that they had.
Yeah. In any case, if they were to take one of those two guys, whether it be Kool-Aid McKinstry or Cooper DeJean, you're talking about adding a player to that defensive backfield that was lights out last year. Yes, they lost some guys. They lost Geno Stone in free agency to a division rival. But you're talking about a potentially one of the best, cornerback tandems, cornerback rooms in the NFL. With what you have, the breakout year from Brandon Stevens last year, Marlon Humphrey, if he gets back to his pre-2023 self after struggling with injuries in 2022 or 2023, I should say, and then adding another first-round talent to that room with Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton at safety, be a heck of a defensive backfield there.
Yes, and I think, for as many losses as they've had, if you get him, that defense isn't looking that bad.
No.
People are saying that Zach Warren's given, a bad hand. He's not going to have all these talents. But, I mean, if they also pull off some of those late signings, free agent signings like they did last year, and, I mean, you can't count on that always, although they do really trust their scouting. This could be a scary defense again.
Yeah, absolutely. A defense that led the NFL in points allowed. I believe it was points allowed, yards allowed, and turnovers. Is that what it was? Or sacks? They definitely led the NFL in sacks. I know that. It was
points allowed, sacks, and
turnovers.
Maybe turnovers.
Yeah.
I should know this. I've written it so many times, but my brain is just so with a million draft prospects.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. In any case, they were elite. So now the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock with the 29th overall pick. Which means that the Ravens are on deck. And that means that one of Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry could be there for their taking. They could still go wide receiver. You know, we just saw Xavier Worthy taken. They could still go A.D. Mitchell if they wanted to, the Texas wide receiver. They could go Ladd McConkey, the Georgia wide receiver. However, it's looking like one of those cornerbacks could be off the board because now that Tyler Guyton has been taken officially by the Dallas Cowboys, we're thinking that it's probably going to be cornerback as the Ravens are officially on the clock and they have 10 minutes to make their selection.
And you know, this is why all those mock drafts never actually means
Nope.
anything.
Throw it out the way. I don't think I saw a single mock draft that had the Atlanta Falcons taking a quarterback, let alone Michael Penix
And I
at
would
8th overall.
Cornerback third, likely what they take. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this all goes back to best player available.
Yeah.
I think the only reason you wouldn't take best player available is if it's a tight end
or a quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a linebacker, but
Maybe running back.
yeah.
But they don't have those. There's nobody that fits that description.
Yeah. It's not in this draft.
Yeah.
So there was a tight end, but he was never falling out far.
Right, Brock Bowers.
So.
Yeah. And of course, Jonas Shaffer and I, we did a PFF mock draft on the Banner Ravens podcast the other day, and Cooper DeJean fell all the way to 30. We snapped him up with that 30th overall pick. And when you're talking about a talent that could fit in this defensive secondary, he would certainly fit that. And I said on that podcast, and I stand by it, that, you know, Mike McDonald with that kind of talent would absolutely know what to do with Cooper DeJean. And I think that Zach Orr would as well.
Not Cooper DeJean.
Not Cooper.
Kool-Aid McKinstry. Cornerback Nate Wiggins
Wiggins.
out of Clemson.
Is the selection for the Baltimore Ravens at number 30 overall. Nate Wiggins is a Baltimore Raven.
And, you know, I just highlighted him for our story that ran today, but
Mhm.
already they're all blending together. So let me pull this up real quick.
Sure. I mean, the book on Nate Wiggins is he has the potential to be a shutdown elite corner, but his size is the biggest concern. 6'1" and just 173 pounds. And he's wiry, strong, and he has great production. Led the Clemson Tigers last year with 9 pass breakups and had 2 interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown last year, 7 starts, first team All ACC. But is he going to be able to add the bulk necessary to be, to be able to stop some of the bigger wide receivers in the NFL?
So he's basically the reverse pick of Kool-Aid McKinstry, right?
In what
Because
way?
he has the long speed,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have the size.
Right.
So, but that does mean that he will complement nicely with Stevens and with Marlon Humphrey.
Yeah.
And I think both those guys may be a little bit more physical.
Sure.
And they have speed, but it's not a 4.28.
Right.
It's 40. So.
Yeah, elite speed for Nate Wiggins. Again, he is the selection for the Ravens at number 30 overall. The Clemson cornerback, a junior from Atlanta, Georgia, 6'1", 173 pounds, and he goes 30th overall. Long frame, according to scouts, needs to add a little bit of weight, as mentioned. He's able to flip his hips very well. Good recognition in the secondary. His speed is going to be what jumps off the tape, and maybe the Ravens are hoping that they put him in an NFL workout program. They can add some bulk to his frame, and he could line up on the outside, and maybe they bump Marlon Humphrey in, and you got Humphrey, Stevens, and Wiggins now.
That is always my thought when it comes down to not size in terms of height or anything, just like needs to add weight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never tried to add weight before, so I don't know how hard or not it is. But I do feel like when you have access to strength and conditioning programs from the NFL, a nutrition plan, that's something that you can address.
Yeah.
If you have the fundamentals, if you have the intangibles, that is something that you can work on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Jonas Shaffer is lurking above us, alerting us that we have to get to some press conferences, I believe.
Oh, I thought I was just going to join.
Oh, you're going to hop on? I don't know if we have a mic for you.
You want to speak? Here, my mic.
In any
Pop
case,
in.
as Jonas Shaffer, how you doing, Jonas?
Hey guys, good to see you.
What do you think of the
Looking
selection of? Yeah, this is the first time we've ever looked down on Jonas Shaffer. What do you think of the selection of Nate Wiggins, Clemson cornerback, at number 30 overall?
What did I say yesterday or 2 days ago about the draft falling their way? I think I probably would have picked Cooper DeJean over him.
Yeah.
That's what we were saying.
But again, I think anytime you can pick a guy who runs a 4.2 at 6'2", that's really, really special, I think. He competes. He put on some weight, good weight, you hope, in between that combine where he weighed, what, like 175 or 165? Yeah, and then he goes to the pro day, and you think he packs on a couple pounds. Hopefully, that is something that is consistent and sustainable, because you got to be able to, fit the run as a cornerback at this level. You got to be able to tackle guys. You think about all the physical freaks that are in the AFC North. You got to be able to tackle Jamar Chase. You got to be able to tackle George Pickens. You got to be able to tackle Amari Cooper. And if you weigh 175 pounds, that's a bit of an issue. I thought it might have been the Ravens were interested in Emmanuel Forbes last year, who kind of fits the similar physical prototype at that position, speedy, kind of slender. But despite everything that happened with Emmanuel Forbes last year in DC, not having a whole lot of luck, it clearly didn't scare the Ravens away from taking a guy with that same kind of body type. So the Ravens are obviously confident in their evaluation. He checks a lot of boxes, I think, for the Ravens, and we'll see how he fits. Maybe kick Marlon Humphrey inside, and we have Brandon Stevens and Nate Wiggins outside.
Kansas City Chiefs are on their schedule. Do you think this is a direct response to Xavier Worthy? Someone's got to keep up.
Did you guys see the tweet from Jordan Schultz where he was quoting an anonymous AFC GM or just NFL GM?
I did not see that.
In response to the Chiefs getting Xavier Worthy, and maybe you see the Ravens picking Nate Wiggins as the kind of response. F me was the response from the anonymous NFL GM. So I think you were seeing punch, counter punch at the top of the AFC right now.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Jonas, you and I have a post-pick podcast that we will hop on as well. I can't thank Giana enough for jumping on here, and everybody for following us along at All Banner Sports. Please subscribe to the Baltimore Banner if you don't already. $1 for 6 months to read all the great work of Giana and Jonas Shaffer and Kyle Goon. We will have complete coverage for you. I know it's 11:41 right now, but we're going to be staying up all night. We'll be back here tomorrow for rounds 2 and 3, and then a marathon day on Saturday. At Giana_Jade, it's Giana's Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano. He's at Jonas_Shaffer. And of course, at All Banner Sports is where you can get us 24/7. So tune in for our second stream of the night. Will happen probably after midnight.